Welcome to Shelterhouse Shares on MCTV. We're so honored that you took the time to learn a little bit more about Shelterhouse today. And I have with me Mary Beth and Maureen. Maureen, can you introduce yourself a little bit further?
Yes, I'm Maureen Barney McGuire, and I'm a court liaison and client advocate for the Gladwin Shelterhouse Outreach Program.
Thank you. Mary Beth?
I'm Mary Beth Amon Niemeyer, and I am the court liaison client advocate here in Midland County.
And I am Janine Ouderkirk, the executive director of Shelterhouse. So we're here today to talk about what does a court liaison do? What is their role, and how does that work to help our clients? First thing I want to say is we do not offer legal advice. We are not attorneys. We do not have an attorney on staff. Our role is to support. So both of you are court liaisons, and what does that role exactly consist of?
Well, we kind of work to assist a client who finds herself, or he finds himself, involved in the court system because of maybe they're a victim of domestic violence. Or sometimes we assist when there's civil dispute going on, and that one person has an attorney, the other one doesn't, and there's a disadvantage there of knowing the court system. So I do things, and Mo does, such as if there's a criminal case, we'll escort them to the courthouse, sit with them during the proceedings, maybe translate some of the jargon because they don't understand, help them just to be more comfortable as they go through a criminal case. Work with the prosecutor that's handling the case, maybe hook them up to VineLink, which is a way of them knowing what comes next, and or if the individual who has harmed them is being released from the jail. There are all different kind of things.
VineLink, that's an online service,
It
right?
is. VineLink came about probably 10, 15 years ago when a young lady who lived in Louisville, Kentucky, her rapist was released from prison and she was not notified. And he made it straight to her home and murdered her.
Okay.
So her parents made it their mission in life to put together some sort of program that would allow victims of crime to be aware of what happens and if and when their perpetrator is released from jail or prison. And that became VineLink.
So it's really important that you help clients,
Yes.
victims of domestic violence or sexual assault,
Yes.
get connected with that so they can
Right.
get that information.
It can email them, it has TTY ability for those who are deaf.
TTY?
People who are deaf perhaps would need a written statement to come through their specialized phone.
Okay.
It will text now, or it will just straight up call the person nonstop every 2 hours for 72 hours until they put a PIN in, and to tell them that the person for whom they have registered is out and about, so they can take steps to keep themselves safe.
Okay.
We have then, of course, we also use it to keep track of the steps in a court case. So a victim is up to date with what's going on with their case. And we assist in things such as writing for victim compensation, if a victim has lost wages due to a crime, or if there are medical bills up to $15,000, or if a family needs help burying someone who was murdered in a crime. The state has a special fund, and that fund will help with those things.
That's through the Victims of Crime Act.
Victims of Crime Act, yeah. So we assist them with all of those different things. We are kind of the person that holds their hand and gives them a quick education on what is available and what comes next.
I imagine you can help them with paperwork or whatever that might be.
We do
too.
paperwork. I've accompanied victims to Lansing for parole hearings.
Okay.
When the individual who harmed them comes up for parole through the Victims of Crime Act, they have a right to be heard about what they want to happen.
Okay.
So there's it's a myriad of things. And sometimes it's just providing diapers or food. If it's a domestic, usually the first thing that happens, the breadwinner who's been arrested and is angry stops providing.
Okay.
So we do things such as that.
So Mo, how do things differ in Gladwin County? Are same things, different?
Well, Mary Beth and my role are very similar as far as job description, but there really are some differences between the two counties. I work up in Gladwin County, and there's a wonderful thing about there being a smaller county to work with, pros and cons, but one of the greatest things is that we really have, Shelterhouse staff has really formed very strong and trusting relationships with law enforcement and prosecutor's office, courthouse, judges, friends of the court, and that is a huge benefit to our clients. When we have a question, I could be sitting there with a client and I can just call the prosecutor up. That's a marvelous thing to be able to do.
I've heard you talk that you're at the courthouse with a client and the prosecutor will say, Mo, come on in here, I need to talk with you.
Absolutely.
So they respect your opinion.
We hope so, and we
Yes.
think so, and I think that they realize that the more comfortable their victim is in testifying or giving the truth or being supported along the way is really important to all sorts of outcomes. So they very often will call us up and just say, from the prosecutor's office and say, hey, I have somebody coming in, I'm going to interview them tomorrow, could one of you be here? And that's a real privilege to be able to, as soon as possible, get with that victim and offer them support. And like Mary Beth said, the court system is really confusing at the best of times. So just to have somebody advocate for you and walk that walk with you makes a huge difference.
I know that a lot of the perceptions people have, you go to court, you have an attorney. Well, when it's a victim of a crime, the prosecutor is your attorney or representing your interest. And so that means they don't have someone who's sitting beside them, walking them through necessarily step by step. And so you can help them navigate.
Absolutely, and it is intimidating, particularly when a victim can't afford a lawyer and maybe their abuser or the defendant can't. That's very intimidating, and I know it helps them to just have one of us sitting beside them, being support, not giving legal advice, but absolutely giving emotional support and being there 100% for them.
So it's not just the trial for maybe the sexual assault or the domestic violence. You can go and be their support if they're going through a divorce or a personal protection order.
Right.
Some of those things as well.
Things, right.
Absolutely. That's a lot of what we do is even everything about the legal system is sort of confusing, even the legal forms, obviously. But just to help people fill out personal protection orders and divorce packets, that is a big help to folks.
So people can do it yourself divorce without getting an attorney.
Right.
Yep.
I just wanted to add one thing. There is a victims' rights director with each courthouse working with the prosecutor. That came about under the Victims of Crime Act. So I will work with Kelly Allen, who, if, say, one of the prosecutors there feels they need a little extra support, we had a trial where there were like 26 family members were going to be there. That's a lot for one person. And the victims' rights director that works with the prosecutor is one person and 5 courtrooms and 7 prosecutors. So when they get a little overwhelmed down there, they will call us in, and we will assist with that to help people get through that trial, because you can't be in all places at once, you know? So we assist with that.
I haven't heard either of you talk about personal protection orders, and I do know that's a big part of your job is helping people fill those out. Can you talk a little bit about why they're important? It's just a piece of paper, right?
Well, back in the day, before 1998, I think it was, if there was a domestic where one person was injured, the way that that person could protect themselves was with a temporary restraining order. And what they would have to do is make an application, file a motion with the court to restrain the individual who was threatening to harm them. And they'd have to go for a hearing, and they'd have to notify the person 2 weeks ahead of the hearing and live with the person for that 2 weeks. And you can imagine the outcome wasn't too pleasant. So the legislature came up with what is called an ex parte temporary order or personal protection order. We help them fill out the paperwork, put together the testimony. They write a statement. It is testimony. It must be factual and true. And we help them get it to the court, and a judge can sign it without a hearing to give protection immediately. Then the other person, the respondent on whom it is served, has to live according to that order and stay away from the person and do what the judge has decided the individual needs to keep them safe. But because we have a constitution and it says you get to hear from the person who is accusing you, that individual, the respondent, has by law 14 days to ask for a hearing. And then it would take the old route, where you would bring in testimony and witnesses and proofs. And then the judge can either keep it in place or can dismiss it or can modify it based upon the testimony.
So your role is to be there, the support, the help.
And to help them write it so they know what to put in there. The judge has to have certain standards met by statute.
Sure.
It's, as Mary Beth was talking about now, I have seen sometimes PPOs go through in just a matter of a few hours. So if a client comes to me and we can help them fill out that form so that we know all the boxes are checked and so that the description of violence is sufficient enough to warrant that personal protection order, we can get that over to the courthouse, and often we've had judges sign it virtually immediately. So that is some very fast protection. But you are right, it is just a piece of paper. But it sends a strong and clear message to an abuser that, you know, by law, they're supposed to stay away. And then, of course, if there is additional contact, the ante goes up with that now that there's, you know, it's actually in writing that they are not to have contact.
So if I have a personal protection order and my assailant, my person that responded, as you called them, violates that, I call the police, it's like an immediate response.
It's immediate response. The officer can decide whether to arrest, but the advantage of a personal protection order and the frustration for some clients is if the officer doesn't arrest, if the officer decides for some reason he's not going to or she's not going to arrest, then our client can file a motion to show cause and go before a judge and tell the judge what happened. To violate a personal protection order is you're violating a court order. And then the judge can assign punishment, 93 days in jail, up to, and up to a $500 fine. Contempt of court citation. So it gives the individual some power. You're not at the mercy of what an officer thinks he should do. And or the prosecutor can watch the docket, and if he finds a PPO that has been violated, because they'll get the reports, they often will file a show cause, especially if it's a violation of the PPO when you have a victim in an open